Welcome to One Big Boat. We're all in this together. A show focused on people and organizations whose work is making a true difference in people's lives. Today, we welcome Stephanie Marchetti, the Executive Director of Montachusett Veterans Outreach Center.
So I think the majority of folks think that all we do is house homeless veterans, which is certainly a big part of what we do, but it's not all that we do.
She's on board to tell us all that they offer and the challenge of serving such a proud population. That's next on One Big Boat. We're all in this together. So when people hear what you do, your role, do they go right to homelessness?
I think a lot of the times they do. Montachusett Veterans Outreach Center has been around for over 40 years, but it's really just the last 20 or so we've been doing housing, and that's when we really started growing and people started getting to know us more. So I think the majority of folks think that all we do is house homeless veterans, which is certainly a big part of what we do, but it's not all that we do.
And is that how they mainly come to you at first, do you think?
The large majority of veterans come to us one of two ways. The first is our benefits coordinator. We have a Vietnam Veterans of America certified benefits advisor on staff. So she has the same permissions as a veteran service officer or a VSO and can help veterans file service claims. So that's the largest service we actually have. And then the other way folks come to us is either directly out of homelessness or out of substance use disorder treatment programs in need of somewhere to step down to before they live on their own again.
Yeah, and it's probably best, you're central Massachusetts. Mm-hmm. What's your surrounding?
So we generally advertise that we covered north central Massachusetts, which is 27 cities and towns. But actually, when I ran the numbers last year, we served 13 states and 2 countries because we've grown.
Yeah,
but
you took the boundary out.
Right, we're just a little stretched. But I think it's because veterans move around a lot, and there's such a tight network that if one of them gets good service, they'll spread it around. And it's our benefits advisor who largely sees veterans in other states. But if a veteran is in a treatment program in Connecticut, New Hampshire, Vermont, and looking for a place to go, they'll often find us through their VA hospital as well.
Yeah. So let's start with the housing, since that's where people are playing. There's all kinds of questions like why veteran homelessness, or is it just that a lot of people are homeless and they just happen to be veterans, or do you find there's a correlation between it?
I definitely think there's a correlation, and there's a few reasons for that. So one is I think our veterans are a really prideful group of individuals who are super resistant to ask for help. And so unfortunately, by the time they get help, they're already in a situation that's as extreme as homelessness. So I think that sense of pride and resiliency that they developed in the military, they really try to stretch as long as they can before they ask for help. But I also think veterans who are homeless have very specific and unique needs that make being amongst their fellow brothers and sisters really important to their recovery and to them moving forward with their lives. So the community that they can build just by relating to one another about what happened in the service is actually one of the reasons they're successful when they move on from our housing.
Yeah, so do all your counselors have military experience?
They don't, and actually I'm not a veteran either, so we're about 50-50, but we do actually have a certificate from the Federal Department of Labor for our veteran hiring practices, which we're super proud of. But I find a mix is important. So, for example, on our counseling staff, I have a licensed mental health counselor that is not a veteran, but a licensed social worker that is. I have a substance use disorder counselor that is not a veteran, but a pastoral counselor who is. And then I have a peer counselor as well. So just the option for folks to shop around and see what's the best fit for them is a really good opportunity for them. I think, too, sometimes our veterans are better vet to vet. Sometimes our male veterans would prefer to talk to a female counselor. Sometimes they would prefer to talk to somebody who was a combat vet. So having a wide variety of options, I think, is another key to success.
Yeah. Sometimes people want real quick and simple solutions, right? Mm-hmm. How do we solve veteran homelessness? Yeah. But maybe to kind of paraphrase something, if you've met one homeless vet, you've met one homeless vet. Mm-hmm. Right? They're all they're individuals.
Yeah. Every single one is different and every single one has a different background. And there are relatable parts of all of that, but knowing how to fix an issue for one person doesn't tell you how to fix the issue for every person. That being said, one of the quickest fixes for most folks who walk in our door is finances. So we have financial assistance grants. If they're at risk of being evicted because they're behind on rent, we'll pay the rent. If their utilities are shut off because they can't pay them, we'll pay that. So what I would like us to continue moving towards, because we're already working on it, is more proactive. How do we keep you housed where you are before it gets to the point where you need to come live in a shelter situation? But the other side of it too is some of our veterans, when they're done or their time is up in the shelter situation, find that they actually like living in a group. So we have permanent group homes too. Sometimes as veterans get older, they just prefer to live in a community of folks who are like them. So we have a group home for male veterans and a group home for female veterans with no time limit. And they like it and they want to stay forever.
Is that Kathy's house?
Yes, Kathy's house is in Winchendon, Mass. That's our female house.
Yeah, and that's solely...
Yep, solely female vets. We do expand it to adult female family members of veterans too, like widowed spouses or parents whose children are currently deployed. We don't do that a lot, but if it's a need and we have a bed open, we will expand it.
And with so much going on, just trying to find a home, trying to find a place to sleep, dealing with homelessness. I just found it interesting on your website. You'll help them with the benefits that they already have, but they probably don't have time to even go for them.
So navigating the VA application process to get connected with service benefits is complicated. Rarely is that something a veteran can do by themselves. So one of the things we'll do for folks, whether they live with us or not, is help connect them. And that's what our full-time benefits counselor does. And that could get them a livable monthly income for the rest of their life that they earned from their time in the service. I often find veterans are resistant to apply for veteran benefits because they'll think, oh, somebody else needs it more than me. And I immediately like to make sure veterans know you applying for benefits actually helps ensure those benefits last and tells the government how much money they need to put aside to fund those benefits. So when you don't get the benefits you've earned, you're actually taking it away from other people, not saving it for them.
Yeah, and I remember I was a middle manager, and if we didn't spend so much money on like office furniture,
you lose it.
They would cut so you have a lot of extra chairs. But in this case, this is way more important than extra
Very
places
important.
to sit.
Sign up for your benefits, sign up for your health care, because it tells the government how much money is needed to be put aside, and if you don't spend it, they'll cut it. How
many times do people say, oh, you work for the VA?
A million times. I actually have a section of our website dedicated to informing people that we are not the VA. And I think for unfortunate reasons, veterans get really frustrated with the VA because those offices don't all speak to each other and they're complicated to navigate. So I also like veterans to know, like, if you don't want to work with the VA, we work with them and we have funding for that from them, but we're private. And so if you never want to work with the VA again, you can still come work with us. Yeah. The other important difference about us not being the VA is that we serve all veterans. So that means your discharge status doesn't matter and your activation level, if you were in the Guard or Reserves, doesn't matter. So a lot of people don't realize if you were in, for example, the National Guard for 25 years, but you never got called to duty, you have no benefits when you leave. You're qualified for nothing and you can't get connected with anything through the VA, despite over 20 years of service. Those veterans can come to us and we will support them.
I did not know that. That's crazy to me.
Very frustrating. And Massachusetts is making really good strides to correct that. Actually, I've written into all of our state contracts that we will use funds for those veterans and they approve them. So at our level, working with the state, they will recognize it, but federally, not quite yet.
Yeah, so they're on guard, they're on standby. They said they'd give up their life.
Yeah, they signed the line. So as far as I'm concerned, they're entitled to all the same benefits as every other veteran.
Yeah. One of the things right before we went on, you were talking about game nights and stuff like this. And I guess, sometimes you look on the outside and like, what are you doing? Like, shouldn't you be worried about post-traumatic stress? Shouldn't you be homelessness? And your point was an excellent point.
Yeah, I think finding joy is part of healing PTSD and anxiety and depression. If all you do is spend your day focused on housing searches and AA meetings and counseling, that's a great way to spend a portion of your day and a necessary way to spend a portion of your day. But you need to remember why you want to be here as well. And having fun is why you want to be here. So right now we are doing fly tie fishing classes where we're showing guys how to tie flies. It's a real tongue twister. And then we'll do a half-day fishing trip when the weather's better. In the spring, we're launching free guitar lessons. We do cooking classes where the guys will all cook together and eat a meal together. We have all sorts of potluck parties, things like that. But what I do with those to tie them into holistic wellness is I very carefully choose who runs those classes. So for example, the cooking instructor is my benefits coordinator. So if you don't know what you need, come see us for something fun and we will find what you need because I've put somebody in the room who can figure it out. In the fly tie class, one of the assistants to the instructor was inpatient at home base in Boston, which is a veterans nonprofit as well. And we'll talk to the guys about what it was like when his PTSD was so bad that he had to go inpatient for a couple weeks. And it opens the door. So they're tying flies, but they're talking about a lot of other stuff. And just sometimes having an hour or two of good in your day gets you to the next day.
I noticed you just said PTSD. Mm-hmm. I noticed on your website you have PTS and you have PTSD.
Yeah, it's a changing of the times. So some folks don't like the D for disorder because it's just post-traumatic stress. I think it is just a evolution of the jargon. So since I don't know which people prefer yet, I just use them both.
Yeah, we've worked with the home base.
Mm-hmm.
I've worked with a gentleman who won the Congressional Medal of Honor.
Oh, wow.
Ryan Pitts, and he does not use the D.
Yeah.
So I don't use the D. I'm like, well, if he's does not using it, I won't use it.
Mm-hmm.
When you mentioned home base, you're not in competition with any of these things, right? We are all just the vet.
We're in one big boat.
One big boat. We're all in this together.
No, I mean, honestly, I send guys to home base. They have a great 2-week program called SOAR that folks can do remotely. So some of the guys in our transitional shelter will log on and do home base's SOAR program. There's another great veterans nonprofit in Devens, Mass, Clear Path for Veterans. We send guys to their canteen lunches each week. They train service dogs there. If somebody comes to us for financial assistance and we don't have enough money to cover, we'll call them to see if they can. Veterans Inc. in Worcester, Mass. is another really great veteran serving nonprofit. If one of our guys or gals needs detox or housing relocation to that area, we'll call them. It's not a competition. People need help. Wherever they're willing to go get help, we will meet them there.
Coming up,
we are renovating the former Poland and Streeter elementary schools in Winchendon. They're side by side, and we're turning them into 44 low-income apartments for veterans.
MVOC is expanding. You're young. But
Sure.
But do you have a story of a vet coming back or so, you know?
Yeah, so we have a lot of really good veteran success stories. My favorite ones are the veterans who work for me now, which is really nice. I have 3 current employees that used to live in our homeless programs, and it is awesome to watch them. Prior to this position, I worked in public higher education for about 20 years at the community college right down the road from where MVOC is. And so I have 2 of my former students. One is a case manager and one's a peer counselor now. They were, and then the third person has been at MVOC longer than I have. All of them were homeless. All of them were struggling with substance use disorders. All of them were struggling with their mental health. And now they work for us to help other veterans. And it's just really nice to see that evolution. I will say the other thing that is really nice to see is when we can give keys to an apartment to one of our veterans. I almost always cry on days when we can give keys to somebody. We've got our 12-bed shelter program. Right now we have 20 apartments and we're building more. Those apartments I don't even keep a wait list for. They fill up. People come and they stay forever. So when one does open up and I can take one of the guys from the shelter and say, like, you live here forever now and you never will be homeless again, super good day.
Yeah, and you're building.
Yes, so we are renovating the former Poland and Streeter elementary schools in Winchendon. They're side by side, and we're turning them into 44 low-income apartments for veterans. The property itself is actually deeded to be for veterans, so it cannot have another use. And we broke ground, I think, September 30th. We're working on just shoring up things over the winter, long lead times, electrical equipment, elevator pieces, things like that. And we'll really get going with construction this spring. And in about 1.5 years, those apartments will open. And what's nice about them is they are located directly across the street from the senior center in Winchendon. They're right along a bus route. And we put space in the building for us to increase our staff and host more events too. So it'll double our size overnight when it opens.
Yeah. So if you're not the VA, how are you guys funding yourself?
A lot of different ways.
How do you keep the lights on, right?
It is something I lose a lot of sleep over. So we have 3 separate VA contracts. One is for our shelter program. One is for what we call housing retention. So veterans who are at risk of losing their housing or newly relocated to the area get services through us. And one is a suicide prevention program. Then we have 3 state contracts, and those help keep our permanent group homes going. And then we work off of donations and private foundation grants for everything else. So we are a pretty small nonprofit. We piece together a lot of funding services, but we make it work.
It's a challenge, right?
We do our best,
It's really a challenge to be able to want to continue to provide those services and still worry about, all right, how do I keep these lights on?
Yeah, even today before I came here, I went to a meeting at Gardner City Hall about a community development grant that they have available because we need to put a new roof on one of our housing apartments. Next week, I'll be talking with a funder because we desperately need to update our website. I can't do things like that unless I find people or local foundations to support all the things that I guess our contracts would consider extras, but like having a roof isn't an extra. No. I need to find $25,000 quickly. So it is a lot of grant writing and a lot of actually working with local politicians too to see what they can connect us with.
And I know maybe people will be watching or listening and they'll go to your old website, but that's okay.
Yes.
But there are people out there, maybe they have a loved one, they have a friend, or they are a veteran, and they're like, well, maybe they have something. Well, he's not homeless. Doesn't need this. Mm-hmm. And your advice is what?
Call us anyway, and just come meet us. Come in for a cup of coffee, and I'll find 3 things you need. I'm very good at it. And if that is just an opportunity to hang out with veterans in our day room, so be it. But chances are, maybe we can get you a service connection. Maybe we can hook you up with an affinity group to do something you like with fellow veterans. Maybe there's a bill we can pay for you, especially in the winter when everything's expensive. The other thing I would say is use our food pantry. There is no income requirement for our food pantry because nobody can afford groceries right now. So come down and just get some of the things that we have so that you don't have to use your own money to pay for them.
Yeah, we did. And I think how we met is one of our clients is the New England Center and Home for Vets.
Mm-hmm.
And interviewing somebody there, they said one of the trends they see now that's heartbreaking to them is they've had some veterans who are 80 years old come in.
Mm-hmm. With nothing. Yeah, it's really, really difficult, especially for that Vietnam era veteran age, because where do they go when they can't live in their houses anymore and they need a higher level of care? There's a few soldiers' homes in the state, which are great, but they're full. And at 80 years old, you can't go on a 3-year-long wait list. So that's one of the things our housing retention case management can do. And that's a grant that exists at a few organizations throughout the state. But it's a challenge. I think the other part of my job that is sort of the other duties as assigned line on the job description is advocating for veteran needs. So I'm actually on the Governor's Advisory Council for Ending Veteran Homelessness. There's a group of veterans nonprofit leaders and VSOs. We meet bi-monthly and just advocate to the state, like, we need to build more housing, and it cannot take as long as it has historically taken to do so. My construction project is in its 5th year, and I haven't built anything yet. That's unacceptable. And so if we want to end veteran homelessness, if we want to support those who have served, we need property, and we need money, and we need the state to commit to it. And they're working on it, but the timelines aren't fast enough.
Yeah, and why aren't the timelines fast enough, though?
Government, man.
Is that another podcast?
I think just slow moving government. And it's all of the best intentions, but it is tough. And look, I mean, I've asked the government for over $20 million. I understand that that's a big ask, but maybe it wouldn't cost that much if it didn't take 5 years to get to this point. So it's something we're working on pretty loudly.
Why do you keep going to work every day?
It's a good question. It just feels good, right? If I've got to be somewhere for 40 hours a week, I want to appreciate and feel good about how I've spent that time. And I feel really good at MVOC. One of the things that I personally like about it is I get to use kind of my degrees and my professional side and you know, go to politics meetings and write grants. But then I get to be who I am, which is someone who is from Revere, that grew up low income and in a tough neighborhood. And I can talk to my guys and we can relate on that level. And it is nice to find a place where all aspects of who I am are a positive. It's a good place to be.
Yeah, you've got a pretty good accent. You haven't used it.
I used to be a speech professor and they made me get rid of it.
So people want to help. People want to find out about you. What?
Yes. So first and foremost, veterans-outreach.org is our website. And you can learn about everything we do there and all of the things that we're fundraising for. Most likely what you'll find we're fundraising for the next few years is the housing project. You can sponsor a brick in honor of a loved one. You can sponsor an area of the building for a business or in honor of a loved one. Or you can see what we have to offer so you can convince a veteran in your life to give us a call. The other place you can find us is on Facebook. If you just search Montachusett Veterans Outreach Center, you can find our Facebook page. And on that page, we don't just share what we're doing, but we share all veterans events throughout the state. And so it's just a good resource to stay connected with opportunities available.
Thank you so much for coming in.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
One Big Boat is a production of Last Minute Productions Incorporated. This episode was produced by me, Jay Dobeck. Ethan Gallo was the sound engineer. Jim Johnston provided production support. Ryan Machewski was our show editor, and Joanne Pallotta was the production coordinator.